Hi and welcome everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to use if statements in PowerShell so that hopefully that will help you with logic in your scripts. My name is Karim Procyshin and let's have a look. Okay, so we've got my script going. I prepared that ahead. And if you like to follow along, you can, keep typing this as we're going, or you can actually go to the description this video where there'll be links so you can download it and just try yourself. It's up to you. All I really use is just the Visual Studio Code, and I'll be running this on PowerShell 5, but in fact we can run it on PowerShell 7 as well, so there's nothing new there. So the if statement. What's the basis of the if statement? Pretty much it will execute to whatever condition you give it to you. And the building is simple. We obviously use our if statement, then that's our condition in the brackets. So we say it must evaluate to true to actually to execute. And then what happens in the curly brackets when actually it evaluates, when it's true. So for example, if you go for this line, if true, so obviously that will always be true because true is true. I just want to show you how it works. So if you have if true, and we see this is true and it actually wrote it. The next step, so we see false. So this statement should then be shown, and as we see, it executes, but nothing happens because it's false. So nothing happens. However, obviously that will be one way, but what if I have a scenario when I want to do something, if something happens, if something is true, then I want to do it, otherwise go and do that, because that's a very common thing, yeah? Do this, otherwise do that. And absolutely we can do it, and there's another keyword called else. So the building blocks, let's maybe repeat them once again, is if statement, my statement, my evaluation in the brackets, then curly brackets, what to do if it's true, and then in the case it's not true, it's false, then do this. So let's try. So this should evaluate us. This is true, and it is. So you run this bit. And now we're going to run this one. In that case, we should see this. This is false. Yeah, because I need to obviously highlight the whole line. There we go. This is false. So as we can see, it's false. It ignored this one and run the part of the else when it's actually false. Okay, so obviously theory is nice, but let's put in something a bit more what you can see. So obviously the most common example is when we do if we're comparing a digits, for example, if something is bigger or smaller than something. So obviously in that case, if 5 is greater than 3, then we write this, otherwise we write this, and we should see obviously 5 is more than 3. So this is the case. But okay, let's maybe put it, because we can also use variables here, isn't it? We often, in the scripts we don't know, so let's generate some random number and let's display this number. So we see this number is 7. So now we run this script multiple times, and pretty much I'm saying if my random, which is 7 in that case, is more or less than 5, then it will display that this is more than 5, otherwise it will say that this is less than 5. Yeah, pretty common, but I think you will be able to see a bit more power with it. So let's try. So we see 7 is more than 5. We need to keep generating it. So 5, so that should also obviously say 5 is more than 5, or yeah, more actually equal to 5. Let's generate a digit that is smaller. Oh, so this is 1. So now it should evaluate to this value. 1 is less than 5. Exactly. So that's, you can probably see how we can now start branching from code with one or another. What else we can do with PowerShell? Because obviously what you see here, I've generated my value here, and then I've checked it against. But actually I can do it on fly. So as you see in this, for example, in the case, and I have double random brackets just so you can see, but in that case, on fly, I will generate the random and I'll compare it to 5. So we can also, run some statements within it. We can actually execute some code. So let's try. And exactly, 8 is more than 5. 3 is less than 5. So I think there's not much more, but the point is I can, create it here, assign variable, and then straight away do something with this variable, which is, well, maybe you will need it at some point. Random is 5, yeah. Exactly, one more example. Okay, now, what really happens quite often in the PowerShell, you will, like, for example, create something, I don't know, you retrieve user, and then once you retrieve that user, go and do something. But this is quite often how we can check it. So pretty much this variable is empty, so it doesn't exist. So in other words, it should evaluate as false, isn't it? So let's try this one. And as we can see, that variable doesn't exist. Therefore, it's true. In fact, I should be able to do this. Because really, what happens here by default, PowerShell evaluates this on fly and kind of glues this is true by default. So I can just say this one and I have same result. So I don't even need to specify this is true, because we're expecting this to evaluate to be true. Okay, other hand, if I, let's say, do that this is false, yeah, so if it doesn't exist, then it should say that, yeah, it doesn't exist. Cool. What else can we do? If user exists, then doesn't exist. So this is actually, case I was coming to. So obviously it doesn't exist now. So let's create a user. So what I'm going to do here is create a hash table, empty hash table. Yeah, this is how you do it. Add, and then curly brackets, I'm declaring the hash table. It's nothing in it yet. I will now just specify. So I want to create one property to my hash table called with name and value of Geralt, and then the surname value of Rivia. So now if I expect it, retrieve it, I have a now property of name with value of Geralt and then surname of Rivia. So if I run this now, it evaluates as user exists because we created that variable. So we can probably see now if user exists, then go and set these values, enable mailbox, etc., etc. If it doesn't exist, then you can actually go and create it, for example. That's quite common case when you deal with users. Okay, now we have a bit more example, a bit more complex. So if the user exists and we know the user will exist, then we can, create a username. So in that case, that would be a username built of, so we have 0, so that would be my Geralt, that should be of Rivia, and we will also remove blank spaces in case there are any, and then we add this at novigrad.com. If there are any Witcher fans, then you probably know what I'm talking about. Let's see. Okay, so create user. So in that case, let's evaluate the statement. And what's happened? Now look, what we did here really is, actually I didn't need to run this before. But anyways, so if that user, what we happen here, actually I've run like a multiple statements, isn't it? So for one, I've created the email. Yeah, I didn't need to run it before, but well, I just sometimes go ahead of myself. And then we just, specify that I found this user, and then this email, which I actually generated on fly, and also into the lower cases. So let's run this once again. So pretty much, it will, in other words, it will run anything what I have within that curly bracket. So it's not, you are not limited only to do one thing. You can actually go and do a whole logical whole thing with your script. What else we can do? We can, for example, do the like operators. We can check. So like is that pretty much when you know part of it, but you don't know the whole string. So you can tell that pretty much what I'm really saying in like plain English here is that if that email contains the word Rivia, then do this. So we can also quite often do this one. So I know what is the part, what should be the part, and maybe the other parts are moving, or I'm not sure about them now. I know it must have this. So that's how I can also evaluate my statements, my strings. Okay, what else? If something is not true, so obviously now I don't have a user called user1, so we can flip the logic and we can add -not to it. So if there is no user1, then you say yes, then you say that, and you see the user doesn't exist. So I don't need to always evaluate to true. I mean, in fact, this user doesn't exist, therefore it evaluates as true. When you kind of start talking that way, it might be a bit weird, but after fairly short time, you will just realize that yeah, this is actually, that's what we evaluate. So obviously, if this user is not true, if this user doesn't exist, then this is in fact true. In that case, the user doesn't exist. So we're going to run this code. And also, other than writing no, we can do exclamation mark next to the variable. This is equivalent say not. So this is very common that you see actually this, and this is also very common across other languages. So that will pretty much do the same, the user doesn't exist. Okay, so you can use -not, or we can just do exclamation mark. Okay, but what if I have multiple conditions to check? yeah, because I might be checking. So obviously we can probably start thinking of that we could do nested if, like a multiple if statements, but that would be a bit killer. But in that case, we can use operators like and or. So in that case, if user is Geralt and is Rivia, then we want to say user exists. So if I do this, yep, that user exists, because obviously our user is called Geralt and its surname is of Rivia, so it exists. But if you, like, for example, do this one, Geralt of Rivia, and user one, which we know doesn't exist. So I want to say that we have a user of Geralt and with that surname, and actually user one exists. Then it's gonna fail, because obviously that part is not true. Therefore, it doesn't evaluate. It's not true. It's false, because that user doesn't exist. We can, on the other hand, try to do or, just for fun of it. And now, because this true values, this is true, then PowerShell this point is not going even to try this one, because this is all. So we know it's pretty much if any of the statements is true, then the whole value is true. But in that case, this is true, so PowerShell in that case doesn't even care about this one. So it's one more thing to check. So we can obviously, because sometimes you might have very long statements like this. So what we can do instead, we can break them down into like a multiple lines. So in that case, if this is all this one, so it's just another way easier to read sometimes. When you have very long statements, you can just have this organized like line by line. Okay, not sure why I have this one, because it works. So I'm checking another quite often case. I will evaluate if the folder exists. So if I, for example, now, just to show you, I don't have this specified, should fail. It's actually true. Did I specify this? Maybe, let's try. Let's restart it. And now we need user. Okay, I probably created a problem for myself, but this now should be, yep, it is full, because this doesn't exist. So obviously this is false. So this even shouldn't, yeah, this pretty much throws the error now, because it doesn't exist. The point is we don't really run this. It throws the error because we're trying to check empty path. So this, so obviously this throws error, but the point is this doesn't run. So if you specify folder and user and folder and the folder, then we can see it actually, this evaluates as true. So if I run this now, this is true. This returns true. So in other words, this is true. So you can say that this folder exists. Now I need to recreate our user, because otherwise the follow logic will fail. Okay, I think this is it. And let's just try to run this. Just make sure it actually works, and then we will come back and I'll explain you what's going on here. Okay, and this is something what I personally really like to avoid if I can. So I don't like to have like multiple, if this, then this, then this, then this, like a multiple, you see, nested here, because sometimes you cannot avoid that and you just have to use it. But if you can avoid that, I just tend to like break it down even into like a separate if statement, when it's just much easier to read. Because obviously now we need to check what happens in this case, then we go next. So let's have a look what's going on here. We've run this, and we've run with this user created successfully. Okay, so for example, first one. So if the user is name of Geralt, then we go and the true is, then we go and true is this statement. So if it's of Rivia, this is true, we go for the next one, and then we have email, then we'll do user created successfully. Now, what's the thing here is that, for example, and let's maybe break user surname. Okay, let's just change it for something. So I want to show, when you see it will be much easier to grab. So if user surname equals, I don't know, whatever. The point is it won't be of Rivia. So if you run this massive statement now, see, user statement is not created. So what happens now? Obviously, we validated the first logic. So it went to the true. And now if user is of Rivia, it's not. So if we, you see, this is also a nice feature in VS Code, it highlights where they start and end. So obviously now this is not true. So it goes straight to this else bit. We didn't even get to this point. It just gets straight here. So this is the way how you can, if you have various conditions, you can go and specify like step by step what happens and what to do or what to fix or what to report. This is you quite often do that when you create users or you prepare migration to update something and you might have multiple steps. At this point you can check, if user exists, if he has this property or that property. If not, then you go and set it up. So you can kind of create the whole chain of events. So I guess you can see it. And as you can see, this is not like, this kind of code you need to kind of look and then pay attention what it actually does. So it's not, I would say, that readable like other bits we do, but certainly you can do this way. Let's move on. Then the next step, we have multiple if-else statements. So in that case, let's grab today's date. So today is Thursday as I'm recording this, and another massive one. So let's just run it and let's have a look what's going on. Today is working day. So what I do here, I here combine quite a few things. So obviously, if today is Monday or is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, then today is working day. But what we can do, we can actually tell PowerShell if none of this statement is true, then you carry on evaluating this one by one. So actually, before we went straight from if to else, but in that case, if I go to next one, which I Saturday, Sunday. So let's prove it. So today equals, so let's say it's Saturday. Wait, it's that Saturday. So now it should get straight to this point. So let's try now. And today is Thursday of the weekend. Exactly, as I said, it's Saturday. So this whole statement is false. It ignored that. It went carried on to another. If we do, Sunday, and we try this once again, and exactly run this one. And if I give it like any other option, some rubbish statement, so it will tell you, oh, I don't know. So it will still run this else, but only if all these three preceding conditions fail. So this is also another way how you can control the flow of your code. Although when we have multiple statements like that, what we can actually do here instead, we can use something called switch. I think I should mention switch because this is something what, the moment when you start getting code like that, switch is really nice. Because in switch, the switch statement is a bit different than ifs, although it's not terribly different. So obviously we use our switch. Then, like in if, this is what I want you to check. And now in here is like our other if statement. So if it's Saturday, Sunday, etc. Here I'm just made it change this logic a little bit. So rather than having multiple this, today is Monday or this or this or that, I just gave it an array, multiple days, and if this is pretty much this equals today. So this is my item. So if today is one of these days, you run this. So this statement is pretty much equivalent of this. It's just much shorter. Then if it's Saturday, we run this. If it's Sunday, we run this. And default, so default is, in other words, our else. So if all the other statements are false, then you run this one. So for example, now we have our today. What is today? What was it set? So now it's rubbish. So now it should evaluate this as unknown day straight away. But if I obviously do today equals Sunday, it will evaluate this one. So it's also another way, and this obviously works with variables, integers, and etc. etc. This is it. All right. So we had a quick look at what if is and how to use it. We also look on the switch. Hopefully that will help you a little bit. This is not, every single case of if. There are a bit more advanced scenarios, but I think at this point, at least it should get you going, or hopefully that will make it easier. So thank you for watching today's episode, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.